This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you like underground music, movies, and more, go to portlanddistro.com for licensed merch, vinyl, CDs, and more. Plug in the discount code 10OFF, TENOFF, for a 10% discount at portlanddistro.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Everything Went Black. This is an Unholy Passion installment with Ralph Schmidt. How's it going, Ralph?
Hey, I'm good, Mike. Glad to be back. Hello, everybody out there. Doing okay so far. I have we had like the school term papers were due last week, so this weekend I don't have a whole lot of work to do. So I've been catching up on some shows and reading a bit, and now doing this podcast, which I was. I pitched the idea a while back, and it's again one of the pieces from our long history of our friendship, and I'm really looking forward to getting into this.
We always have a pretty cool backlog of ideas, you know what I mean, like out there, you know, in the tank, so to say. And so now we're finally getting around to doing this one, and it should be should be a blast to reminisce and talk about all this stuff again.
Yeah, and I mean, it's I think again, I mean, we talked like before we started recording, we just talked a bit about like how both Tombs and Ultha are bands that you can place at various like settings of bands. So, for example, you know, like you played with Evoken and you can tour with a black metal band, which you did, and you could tour with a slam death band, but like a more hardcore-ish metal band. Yet that would work, and Ultha does kind of the same thing. And the same way are like our installments of the Unholy Passion thing, because we're talking about all the stuff that we're into, and you and I both have like a broad variety of tastes. So I think it's always cool that these episodes are always very different from like the stuff we did before.
Yeah, totally. And just like if you looked at the pile of LPs like on my in my record player area, you would see like a pretty wide swath of musical styles, you know, film scores, black metal records, stuff like that, electronic music, a lot of different stuff, you know, so we like to keep things very general and very broad over here.
Yeah, I have to, that brings me to a good point, because I was like next to my couch, there's the wall where all the vinyl is standing that I just bought. That's not yet hasn't gotten spinned yet. And dude, thanks for giving Danny the heads up about the Husker Du thing, because I think Danny contacted you and asked about like Husker Du records, and she gave me this fucking amazing box set, the Savage Young Du collection.
Sure.
Like four vinyls, demos, live recordings, and a thick book of like photos and text about Husker Du, which is like a fucking gem of a thing to possess. So thanks for giving the heads up, and thanks to Danny for giving it to me.
No problem, man. I mean, I'm glad you've contributed somewhat into your, you know, that epic Christmas present. You know, I actually bought myself a really cool Christmas present similar to that. The Celtic Frost box set. You know that.
Oh,
you know,
nice.
Yeah. And I've said this before, but they suspiciously left out Cold Lake.
The Mysterium. Why Tom Gabriel Fisher is not backing that record?
Dude, he should just get over it, man. I mean, there's enough fans out there that you know either like and appreciate that record or don't hate it. You know what I mean? It's part of his legacy, man. You should you should re-release it or something, you know?
Yeah. And it's kind of like the same with the Swans and Killing Joke, where like both these bands started out as these malicious, like nasty post-punk whatever noise rock acts. And in the early, like in the 80s, I think when cocaine took over, both bands kind of crumbled and became softer. I mean, it's the Burning World of Swans is like a pretty folky record almost, but still dark. But if you have like what's that? Outside the Gate, is that the record of Killing Joke that
Yeah.
came after Brighter Than a Thousand Suns, which is pretty much like let's try to make every song sound like Law. Dude, like I'm throwing a blank. I love like Blood. Like everything is like the pop hit, and then one record, like one song, Jazz is even like rapping. It's so bad. But then they came back, and I mean, like in the '90s, then they got extreme again. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing with Celtic Frost and a bunch of other bands. I mean, look at the discography of Paradise Lost. They drifted into the like indie rock thing, and then they went back to do. But they re-released their indie stuff too, because there's still people backing it and they want to have it on vinyl. So like Fisher should do the same thing.
Well, with Swans too, that Burning World, I think I love that record actually. I think it's great. I have like a CD version of it, and the song "Goddamn the Sun" is like probably one of my favorite Swans tracks, and I think there's a licensing thing because that was a major label release, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think G. Rice is more at peace with his discography as maybe Jess Coleman. But then again, like in comparison to Michael G. Rice, like I think like Michael G. Rice heads down the more sane person in comparison to Jess Coleman, I think.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, I've never met Jazz Coleman, but I remember there was that time we played Roadburn, and the day before we played, Killing Joke was there, and everyone was telling us about how insane that guy was.
Yeah. I mean, there's those like all the people that I know that booked shows with them. They're kind of like the worst. They're really difficult. Swans, like they seem to be like just chill. I mean, on stage and like at the sound check, Michael G. Rice like difficult. But aside from that, I mean, he's driven. He's certainly a maniac, but I think he's more composed in a way. But like the Jazz Coleman thing, I remember like there was this announcement of the tour that the Cult, Killing Joke, and what was the third band? I don't know. They wanted to tour like a Theater of Hate. Was it that? I don't know. But like they wanted to do this big ass American tour.
Oh, the Mission.
And,
Was it the Mission that was on that?
Oh yeah. I think that was that tour. So like it was this big tour that was planned, and then like a few days before, they didn't know where Jazz Coleman is. So like Killing Joke had to like cancel the tour because even the management didn't know where he was. And then like some days later, he just posted on his Facebook like, I'm Joshua Tree. I have this little hut. I want to finish my symphony and I want to finish a book. So like I'm not going on tour. Stuff like this is like,
wow.
Yeah, that's difficult to work with.
Yeah, totally, man. You know. But before we get going, I just want to shout everyone out, the other horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. See, I'm getting better at saying that. I usually mumble my words when I come up to this. So, yeah, of course, we have Brandon Legion giving us Horror Wolf 666. It's a horror podcast, obviously, by the name. And Brandon is his show is geared more towards interviews, and he gets a lot of luminaries, up and comers, all in the horror genre. Does a great job, and definitely check his show out. On Tuesday, we have Grandmaster Jackie Smith bringing you into the Necrosphere, which in my opinion is the greatest extreme metal podcast period today, anywhere. And I gotta tell you, man, when he was on vacation, I missed it. I missed those Tuesdays, you know, hearing him go on and on about his, the Metal Storm stuff and, and the guests and all that stuff, man. It was definitely a lull in my week without that show. And of course, we have Wednesday, which is Everything Went Black, the podcast you're listening to right now. Necro Thursday brings us Necromaniacs. That's a horror review show that I co-host with Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid. Very, very occasionally, we might have a special with a guest. You know, like I had the Adams Family on a while back. They will be returning because at this point, I consider them friends, and I always look forward to talking to them. So they'll be coming back. They have some news regarding future films that are about to be released. You know, and that's going to be something we're definitely going to cover. And on Sunday, we have Carl Hikara with Sold Knox, and I guest on that show almost on a regular basis because we have a sub series of weird fiction, short stories, dark fantasy, sword and sorcery discussions, and Carl and I get together and do that every now and then. So yeah, that's a full week of podcasting action for everybody.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, the cool thing that I always say is like, I'm so glad to be in this circle of people and that there are all these crazy crossover episodes. For example, there will be one with you, me on the Horror Wolf, which will be out sometime soon.
Yep.
I mean, I've been on Carl's show, I've been guest on Jackie's show, and so like Jeff Kashid is doing this, and Mike Scandato is doing that. So like it's all intertwined. And that's makes this whole thing so interesting. It's like kind of reading comic books. Like I always loved the crossover comic books. Yeah.
Who would be the villain? I think out of all, like, who's like the Doctor Doom or Professor X? You know, that kind of like who's who in this world that we have here? You know.
So yeah, we've got we've got the African British Thanos. Definitely. So Mr. Smith, like if he, or like maybe with the Hulk smash, so I can see like if Jackie puts his fist on the ground, the earth will shake. Carl is Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like the cryptic, the Dark Lord.
Yeah.
Let's see, Brandon Sabretooth, maybe.
Okay.
Like
I'm down with that.
Brute force, the long hair, the beard, you know. You would be the Punisher. Like definitely.
Punisher. That's funny.
Yeah. That's you. Who else do we have? Like Mike Scandato. What could he be, or who could he be? He could be Professor X. No, he's he's not like Professor X is really calm. I have to think on that. Also, I don't have a clear picture of how Jeff Kashid looks. Like I just know his voice. I myself, I don't know. Like I wish I would be Venom in a way. Like guy has always like been like, would be cool to have like, you know, like have this symbiote that always can like, I want to look sharp, like make a cool dress, cool suit for me or something. Aside from that, I would be probably like have the superpowers of Storm. Like I just want to control the weather. I could fly. I could shoot lightning up some people's asses. I would be done with that.
I'm going to say that you're the Red Skull because you're German. So.
Oh, dude, like I could cancel instantaneously.
I would say Mike could be Peter Parker, man. That dude's like, yeah. You know, he's like a very New York sort of guy. You know, Mike's Peter Parker, and Jeff could be Nightcrawler.
But Nightcrawler's German too.
Yeah, but
I'm
okay. Well, all right. All right. So not to avoid getting canceled, we'll make you Nightcrawler then.
All right.
And Jeff could be the Red Skull.
It was also dangerous. Like, oh, I heard the guy from Ultha. He's like a Nightcrawler. You know, like he goes out at night and stalks people, and then he disappears. Yeah, like see, like, even comic books are woke now. Like we have to be careful.
So once again, we reach back into the past and we talk about something that actually was a bonding experience on the right around the time we met, man. Like when we first really met way back when. Was it like 2004 or something, possibly?
Yeah. Yes, that's all right. I always try to track down, but like I think it was that time. I mean, wait, it must be. Yeah, I started studying in Heidelberg 2004. So it must be a year later or something because I was still living with Daniel. So yeah, that was just like in my apartment where I had two like flatmates. Yeah, and that was the ill-fated Anodyne tour that has been a topic for so long. But that was the time that we got to hang out. And I remember like hanging out in the kitchen where we started talking about how much you hate Seattle and Unbroken. And that was kind of the start. And then I introduced you to Breach, and I think like that's where we like saw like, okay, there's a lot of stuff we're both into the same things. And then back then, I mean, it was the time where DVDs were like still hot and fresh. And I had a VHS player, and I remember that you guys had to like kill some times. I had to kill some time, and I went to the supermarket to get some groceries and do breakfast for the three of you and me. And then I came back, and I think Josh, Joel, and you were sitting in my small room and watching this videotape we're going to discuss today on my old TV and with my old VHS player. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bright spot on that tour. You know, it's funny. I talk like I was in hell or something like that during that month we spent over there. I mean, it wasn't great, but it really, you know, looking back, yeah, there was definitely some fun moments on the tour. You know, it wasn't like all bad, but yeah, it was pretty brutal just for a lot of reasons. You know, and you know, not only the fact that it was kind of poorly organized, but then again, you know, on that level of touring, when is it ever good? You know, I guess like that's the question.
Yeah.
You know, it's always like, you know, we're operating on this like subterranean level, and you take a lot of risks when you go over there. And it definitely gave us a lot of funny stories. So that's cool.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, it was the founding moment of our friendship. And
That's
so,
right.
like, it was, if it's worth something, then it's that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's not the least important thing. I mean, that's
no,
definitely
no.
like one of the high points of the whole experience, really, is you and I meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And it's like, I mean, it's 2023 now. So we're going up to like almost 20 years soon. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Time flies, man. It
Yeah.
seems it seems like a lifetime ago, but then again, it seems just like yesterday. I got to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's still like I still have vivid memories of that, and that like that thing that's why I pitched the idea a while back. I was like, this part with the videotape is so ingrained in that memory that I was like, we're both death metal maniacs, and I know that Mike, Jackie, and you want to do like the '90s death metal episode
Yeah.
on Into the Necrosphere. And I was like, this is like the perfect thing. And then because when you were here in December and we browsed through some like videos and a short gore fest and like it's like, yeah, this is like the nuclear blast stuff. So that's why I had the idea of like doing this podcast. And yeah, you want me to introduce like what we're going to do
Yeah,
here?
yeah. Let's you take the reins on this one since this was actually your video that we have.
So the first off, the stupid thing is like I had the idea when this whole video was still as one piece on YouTube. It's not anymore because someone complained. So I had to reconstruct this video as a playlist, which I did, and we will post in the comments, and so you can watch along. But what we're actually talking about is the 1992 death metal compilation video, Death is Just the Beginning, released by Nuclear Blast, which back then, Death is Just the Beginning was a compilation CD they put out with their own household name bands and newer bands that they were pushing or trying to sign. And they did two parts, and in between these first two parts, they released this videotape with some of the stuff that were on the CDs and some stuff that hasn't been released at that time. And yeah, I mean, the first thing I wanted to touch on is like, did you like compilations back then? I mean,
I
now we live in
love
the
them, dude.
we live, yeah,
I
yeah,
love
we live in the time.
compilations. There,
Yeah,
there's not only do I love like I would not only a compilation that I would maybe buy, but I remember back in the '90s, a lot of times magazines would have compilations that you would
yes,
buy. You'd go down to Tower Records or something like that, which is obviously a fading memory for a lot of people. And you'd buy
Yeah.
like Thrasher or something, or there used to be a magazine that it was called SOD, Sounds of Death, and they
Hmm.
would you could get a comp with that too, and that was like this black and white, like totally underground, and the CD would have like bands like Darkane on it, or some at the time very obscure, death metal, and
Yeah.
you could find interviews with all these guys, and it was a huge staple of stuff that I dug.
Yeah. It was the time when CDs were piss cheap. So you had like magazines like Metal Hammer and Rock Hard, Kerrang, and they all had like these CDs coming along with a track of the newer, fresh bands or something that was just released. And sometimes when you order stuff from a distro or from a store, then they put some CDs within there. For example, I got the Gods of Grind sampler from Earache back then, which was like a CD compilation of the bands that went on tour together, which was, I think, Cathedral, Confessor, Carcass, and I don't know, Morbid Angel, maybe. No, it wasn't Morbid Angel, but like you had like these CDs, and I always loved that because there were bands you knew, and then you got new stuff you didn't know, and that was the gateway into like listening to more bands and getting more records. So smart move, actually.
I think I blew the timeline for that SOD stuff. That might have been more like tail end of '90s into the 2000s, but yeah, sorry about that. Also, like on the hardcore punk vibe, Allied Records. Remember Allied Recordings?
Mm-hmm.
They used to do pretty sick comps, and I mean, it wasn't metal. It was more like kind of emo and like punk stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and here for me, like in my socialization of hardcore, there was this label Lost and Found, which became like the absolute hate object of everyone because they just released bootleg CDs of bands, and they didn't ask the band's permission. So, for example, my first contact with Ringworm was a CD which had a different name. I can't remember it, but it was pretty much the record, The Promise of
Yeah.
Ringworm, in a different sound because it was demo recordings and they just released it and stuff like this. But they had a CD, a double CD called Golden Shower of 20 Hits or something.
Yeah.
And I learned so much stuff because there was Heresy on there, but also Turning Point. So you had like hardcore punk, grindcore, stuff like this. And yeah, and then like in the death metal scene, the early Nuclear Blast catalog was so good. And it was the epiphany of like the stuff that was cool back then before black metal actually happened. And yeah, the Death is Just the Beginning samplers, number one and two. I remember I had to buy the CD like another time because I blew through my first copies because I played them so often.
And also, it's on this edition of it, it's surprisingly diverse. It's like more diverse than I
Yes.
remember. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
hanging out at your place listening to this and just it being a barrage of like blast beats and like death metal and stuff when I was
Yeah.
totally, obviously I like that stuff too, but like revisiting it now, I'm like, oh wow, there was actually other stuff on there that gave it a little bit of diversity too.
Yes. So yeah, so the thing is now, I don't know, like for the listeners now, this is probably like an episode, like it's always like a lot of times on Necromaniacs. If you haven't watched it, maybe go and watch it first, or you just listen to us and then like check out the stuff you want to check out. So this videotape had like it had like a magazine kind of vibe to it because there was a narrator, and it was one Matthias Herr who went on to write the Heavy Metal Lexicon 1 to 5 and the Black Metal Bible. So he became like a metal journalist and was pretty successful with that. And back then, he looked like Malibu from American Gladiators. So So it was him like sitting in an office, which I assume was the office at Nuclear Blast, and he was talking into the camera in this shitty like lo-fi VHS quality they had. And then he explained some of the bands that were up, and there were interludes with like small parts of interviews, and then the main part was 15 music videos. And what we will do today is we will go through all 15 music videos that were on that tape, talk about the bands real quick, what are our favorites, and stuff that we maybe loved back then, maybe stuff that like, holds up now, and stuff that is now better than it was back then. So that was my general idea.
Yeah, no, totally.
Okay, so yeah, I found a website which has like a really detailed like rundown of the video. So the cool thing is the video always before the music video plays had like this radio static sound, or like almost like a water gurgling sound, and like you saw like a skull kind of TV static thing, like if you change channels and there was no program. And then it said like the name of the band and the video. And when you watch the videos that I combined in the playlist, you will see it now and then. So the video opens with Winter, like the band Winter. It has like the opening score for this video. And then the first thing you will see is an interview with Peter Tedgren from the band Hypocrisy. And then the first video is Left to Rot, which is of Penetralia, Hypocrisy's 1992 debut record.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a classic record. I also dug Osculum Obscenum, the one after that one
Yes.
too. But the thing I liked about Hypocrisy is like they always had like this evil vibe, like bullet belts and like upside down crosses and like this kind of, it's not, kind of overtly occult, like kind of satanic like vibe to it, which I always thought was really cool.
Yeah, and this is like a reoccurring theme on this videotape. So like pretty much most videos are kind of shot in the same way. So you have mostly the band playing, performing in one capacity or another, and then you have like cutaway scenes, really fast cuts of like cities or obscure scenes. Like later in the video, you will have like a crossing scene, like of Jesus carrying his cross and shit like this. So it's kind of always kind of the same way, but there is a clear difference between the European death metal bands, which are on this tape primarily like Swedish, Austrian, or British, and the American bands. So like Hypocrisy is opening up, and like you said, it looks very satanic, very evil, and I really love it, and it has the typical Swedish death metal sound that bands back then had. And Hypocrisy to me is a band that was always okay. They were not like a very successful band. They changed their styles like with the fourth dimension. They become more proggy like a lot of death metal bands. Didn't do it for me, but the Penetralia record is still something I go back to now and then. They have a fucking cool logo, and the video and the song is a banger, I think.
Actually, just in general, I feel like the death metal that started out as progressive, and there's a couple of those bands on this list here, they just kind of like maintain that vibe throughout their career. But then when the bands that are brutal and they're like, okay, we're going to become more progressive, I always feel that's like a misstep, really,
Yeah.
And
There's
there's
only a
tons
few
of
bands.
tons of bands that follow that trajectory that I think kind of fail a little bit.
Yeah, I mean your band, my band, like all our bands, they progress, but we still always kept that happy vibe. And I mean, I with Planks, I had the feeling like if I hadn't stopped Planks, I would have to go in like a more, I don't know, like more polished, kind of less heavy perspective, and then I would have to do like proper singing, which I wasn't able to. And also, I didn't want to do it, and I mean, the step that we did now with the Ultra record, with the last one, it's more progressive and more open, but it's still a heavy record. And some of these bands, they like just completely broke away from that stuff. And I mean, like the best example, one of the early death metal bands here from Germany was Pyogenesis. And they became a completely ridiculous, like alternative band, then tried to do like Helicopters kind of death rock and roll thing, and then they went back to death metal and weren't good at it.
Yeah.
No. So number two is a band that was always very true to their style and still to this day is. They just recently played in Dortmund, so they're still going and just lacking their infamous singer that they had on this one. It's the American band Monstrosity with Final Cremation taking off of Impending Doom, their 1992 Nuclear Blast record. What do you think of that, Mike?
Oh, well, those guys are, I mean, they come from the, the epicenter of American death metal too, and in this video, it features a young, baby-faced George Corpse Grinder, and it's like, it looks like him, but it's like, wow, that guy like looked way different back then, you know what I mean? And, but the same brutal as hell vocals and, Corpse Grinder is one of my favorite singers in death metal, honestly. I mean, I think that people used to at least have that debate versus Barnes versus Fisher. And I mean, let's face it, Fisher really destroys Barnes on the vocal front,
Yeah. I mean, I think Barnes has back then, like when Butchered at Birth came out and Tombs of the Mutilated was, I think, the first one I had of Cannibal Corpse, it was lower and more evil than like a lot of other singers. But I wasn't that impressed, so I always preferred, for example, John Tardy's vocals from Obituary or Corpse Grinders, because they still resemble, like you can understand words, and all that kind of like that Chris Barnes does is just like mumbling. And I mean, look at what became of him. Like he became a complete douche. Yeah,
dude, like he is like the most shot singer ever, man. Now, like I love the first couple of 6 Feet Under records. Haunted. That's a good record. But his heyday was definitely the early Cannibal stuff. But I think like when Corpse Grinder joined the band and that just took them to another level in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And this, I mean, we just spoke about the difference. Like this is prototypical early 90s American death metal, recorded at Morris Sound by Jim Morris, Dan Seagrave artwork, which still is fucking amazing. The whole fucking video, you know what it reminded me of? It's probably the first COVID performance ever.
How so? Explain.
They play this big ass stage to no audience, so it's like filmed like a proper concert where they are on that stage, but there's no one in the room. And I mean, they give it their all, but it's just like I watched this, like, oh, I know this. Like 2 years ago, everything looked like this because there was no one in attendance. So I mean, like you did like performance videos where you had to play, like give it your all without an audience there. I didn't have to do it as of now, and I always think it's weird, but they own it back there, and it's just it's cool. And I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's interesting you say that, because immediately what I thought about was literally on the dawn of COVID. I was still living in Brooklyn at the time, and I was gonna go to Body Count and Cro-Mags. And the show got canceled, right? So instead, the Cro-Mags did a what became like a household word, a live stream.
Yeah.
And that's when it dawned on me that we were in for a fucking hard time, man. Because it was like they probably I think they rented one of those rooms at this place called SIR in Manhattan, and it was like the band was like tearing it up. Harley had like, he had no shirt on and whatever, and there was like no one there though. Rocky George is playing guitar, and I was like, man, this is so fucking weird, and I hope this doesn't last very long. Then fast forward like a couple of years, it did last long. But yeah, I could see what you're saying about this video.
Yeah. I mean, back then, music videos were the way to sell music. And that was at the beginning of death metal getting really big. And I mean, between 92 and 94, all of a sudden, when death metal happened on Headbangers Ball, and you had a lot of these performance videos because people wanted to see the band like rocking out. That was kind of the vibe that you wanted to have, like people moshing, stage diving, and shit. There was like only a few death metal bands that already had like concept clips where they, I mean, mostly they're like mixed clips. I mean, the only like, I know it's also there's like a bit of performance in there. One of my all-time favorite death metal videos will come up later, and that has a story, and I love story videos way better than just straight performance videos. But I still like the optics of that one with the cover of the impending doom artwork in the background is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, also like performance videos are just like way cheaper to do. You know what I mean? It's just get a couple camera angles and have the band rock out, and that was that. When it got to storylines and that kind of thing, you had to like get actors and locations and shit like that. So
yeah. And what I wanted to add before we go on is like if you compare the first two videos on there with Hypocrisy and Monstrosity, is what to me is the biggest difference between American and Swedish like European death metal back then. American death metal is really technical, really brutal, and the guys look like tight jeans, Nike, Air Force, high tops, short sleeve band shirts, and like banging out. And the Swedish bands, they already had like the atmosphere going, way more satanic, way more evil, skinny looking, black jeans, kind of more in the vein of what like then became so popular in the black metal development. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the European death metal was definitely more satanic and evil, like the whole atmosphere about it. Except for Morbid Angel, man. Like Morbid Angel Morbid Angel to this day is still my favorite death metal band of all time. And even like those first few records, were just such classics, in the David Vincent era of the band, from that period was like very, very, it hit me really hard when I first listened to them, back then.
And the still one of the differences is that the Swedish death metal in this case was way more melodic. It was way more melody driven than brutality. And I think Morbid Angel, they could do it both. They could be like the most aggressive thing and switch into like these atmospheres with the weird ass melodies and shifts. And bands like Monstrosity or Death, Death became like also a very melodic band. But like the Americans seemingly were like more into brutal stuff. And to me, like Incantations Onward to Golgotha was like the most evil, satanic sounding death metal record from the States back then, like next to Morbid Angel.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that, man, for sure.
Okay, number 3, which is crazy to see because they ended up becoming one of the most game-changing, most important, not to me, but to others, big metal bands of the recent years, which is like the first music video of the band Meshuggah, Abnegation Necessity.
Yeah, once again, this goes what I was saying earlier about bands that started out being progressive and just kind of, started evolving from that point. And Meshuggah is that kind of band. Like they were definitely starting in a spot of progression when it comes to the style of music. Like they were very incredible musicians. And this is Contradictions Collapse is the LP that this one's on. It's like their first one. And
No, it's the Nope EP. Like it was even before that. It was their very first EP that Nuclear Blast
Oh,
released.
damn. Okay. I think this is on that though. That Contradictions Collapse.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
none. Right. Yeah. It's on the. Yeah. I think that the CD I have might have both of those records on it. So that's
Okay.
probably why I'm thinking
Yeah.
of that. But Jans Kidman is singing on this record too and playing guitar,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. And
Yeah.
but yeah, they kind of transcended death metal too. I mean, they like let's break it down a little bit. I mean, they started out very much entrenched in this world, but then
Mm-hmm.
as time went on, you could even say that they influenced like new metal, deathcore,
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
slam, and
Mm-hmm.
now in a way they're almost like this kind of progressive, like maybe like Tool or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I would say they're the extreme metal Tool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Because
love
of their
all of it. I mean, I think I've always been a fan of these guys, and I'm not really into incredibly technical music. Like that's not really my
yeah.
go-to. But they
Yeah.
wrote good songs too and good parts,
Yes.
and that's why I
Yes.
liked it.
Yeah, that's also what did it for me. Like, I'm not really big on Meshuggah, like the later stuff. Manu is, I mean, he's a drummer. Like, all the drummers are into Meshuggah, I guess. But it's they always have like the balance of technicality and atmosphere and melody, and so I can back that. So whenever we're on tour and Manu puts on Meshuggah, I'm like listening and think like, this is actually pretty good, and I should maybe listen more to this. But I remember like I bought the fucking Nope EP on CD, and if I still had that, because I at one point I just gave it away, yeah, I would be rich now. I think you can sell it for a lot of money now because they're such an important big band. But the crazy, yeah, sorry.
No, it's I just had to clear my throat. Yeah, it's I don't have the EP. Actually, like I was saying, like the mistake I made was there's a LP that has that on it, and that's why I was like, oh yeah, I had both of those in one volume. That's what it was.
Mm.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like when I rewatched these videos, I instantaneously had the same feeling I had way back then when I listened to it the first time, and I said like, this sounds like a death metal band trying to be Pantera, because Pantera was like one of the biggest bands in the world back then, with Vulgar Display of Power coming out in '91, and it had like at some points it has like this Pantera-esque kind of like hardcore vibe to it,
Sure.
but it's like way more technical. But also the vocals, they're not like the gruff death metal growls. They're like really understandable barking kind of vocals. So yeah, like for me, it's like technical Pantera in a way. Yeah.
That's a good point, actually. I remember having similar feelings about it too, because back then Pantera were the kings. Like they were pretty much ruling like heavy metal throughout that era.
Yeah.
The early '90s. And speaking of hardcore, like Meshuggah is also a band hardcore fans like. Like
Yes.
I think 94, 95, I saw them. They were on tour at Hatebreed actually, and
Oh, okay. Wow.
yeah, and that in the States, and that was I'm trying to remember. It was the mid '90s somewhere. Those two bands played together, and I was living in Boston
Mhm.
at the time, and I remember going to that show.
Crazy. But yeah, they're also the band that transcends scenes, so that's cool. Like successful band, well deserved. They always toured a lot, put out a lot of music, and none of it is really bad, so good for them. And this were like the children's stepping stones that they had in this kind of setting on this '92 videotape. It's crazy. Yeah. Well, on to a band that no one remembers, I assume, or no one actually knows they existed. It's a band called Fetish 69 from Austria with their video Pig Blood from the record Antibody, which came out in 1993.
You know
What's your
what?
take on that?
I actually saw these guys perform when I was
Really?
back in the '90s when
Oh,
the
wow.
the first European tour I ever did was with this band Otis, and we were on tour at Fetus and Bark Market, and one of the dates in Austria was Fetish '69 opened the show, and
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember they were also on one of the Dope Guns and Fucking in the Streets Amphetamine Reptile collections too. So
Which makes sense because this is the first really off band from the sound, I think, on that tape.
yeah, I was familiar with them not through death metal, but through the AMREP scene,
Mm.
and they were cool guys. I thought they were good live too. And I don't own any of their albums. I just own a T-shirt which is gone that left it's in the ether somewhere. And
Mm.
I remember getting a T-shirt from those guys, and then just the one track on the AMREP comp.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I tracked down a copy of the CD back then because I wanted to have everything on Nuclear Blast. But it's one of the things that back then didn't make any sense to me. Like I didn't listen to it properly or a lot of times. Nowadays, like going back to it, it's almost it would have fitted the like a spot on our when we talked about Zune Fields of the Nephilim
Yeah,
or the
yeah,
Nephilim Zune, this industrial kind of metal thing. You can like I would say like you can hear similarities to like yeah, the MRAP stuff, a bit of Ministry in there, but it's not as stubborn. It's like still very chill in a way, like for one of those bands, but it has more this noise rock kind of sound to it.
yeah. They were an interesting band. Like I said, I've never heard their entire LP, and I thought they were really good live. Like when we played with them, they were really cool, And maybe I should try to find that. I'm sure it's on like Spotify or something somewhere.
Yeah, they didn't do like a lot more than this. I think they did one more record and then like they disbanded. And yeah, it's like an obscure afterthought of a band. But yeah, it's like a bunch of Austrian bands on this videotape. So from Freddy 69, there was a brief interview with the band Resurrection, which is a band that I absolutely love. They were also from America, but they don't have a proper music video on there. It was just like a brief interview with them. It's a band from the Malevolent Creation surrounding. They have one record called Unbound Existence, which is absolutely fucking amazing. And then comes the weirdest shift because after that, the next video that we see is a band called the Rostock Vampires with The Instance from the record Torment of Transformation from 91. How did you like that, Mike?
Hard pass on this, man. Like I don't even remember seeing this like when we watched it because that's how much of an impact it left on me, I guess. And I don't even know what to make of it, man. It's like I don't know, like pop punk or something like that. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. I just know I don't like it really.
Discog says is hardcore punk,
Okay.
and to me, like the beginning sounds like one of these melody punk, like the California skate punk bands. But it was before that stuff became popular. But it sounds so very German. They're from Dortmund, and actually, their first record came out in 1989 on Nuclear Blast. It was one of the first records Nuclear Blast put out, and the first one was like vampire themed, like was Transylvanian something, and it's even worse. It's like
It's even
stupid ass
worse.
melody punk. Dude, I was like, it looks cool, like the name is cool, and I was like, okay, maybe they're going for a kind of Misfits vibe, but it's just like unbearable. And the instance video is nah, it's not good.
Yeah, I never heard anything besides this one track because like it sounded just like something I would never really like, And I'm not a
Yeah,
big fan of even that SoCal like pop punk sound really. I don't
yeah.
listen to that kind of stuff at all really.
Yeah, no, I remember like when all that stuff became popular with Green Day and Offspring and all these bands that Kerry King just like slammed it in interviews like this is not hardcore, this is not even punk. It's like this is garbage. And I mean, there's like some bands.
I mean
Yeah,
I always attribute it to like an East Coast versus West Coast thing because there are literally no bands that sound like that out on the East Coast that are like that's a West Coast sound. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Especially like in hardcore and like hardcore punk style. Just like the whoa. Like that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, the Misfits did that for sure, but they're the Misfits, and occasionally maybe on
Yeah.
some later Agnostic Front records you'll hear that, but
Yeah.
that's like a sound that's like definitely rooted out on the West Coast.
Yeah. I mean, for everybody out there, I pitched an idea to Mike, and I don't know if we'll ever do it, but I want to do episodes on like dead scenes or dead sounds, I want to call it, with like these musical subgenres that became insanely popular and then faded down, and no one listens to it anymore. And we could definitely do one on this, like here you call it milk punk because it's like white guys like super like turned down, it's like milk punk. Yeah, so maybe some of that, like you will hate like some serious bashing of bands on here, but for
There,
now,
there's a couple of
yeah,
bands
sorry.
I'm sorry to cut you off, man. Sorry,
No, I'm good.
apologize. There's a few bands on the East Coast that kind of dabble in that sound, but they just sound harder. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like Kill Your Idols, maybe. Great Long Island hardcore band.
Yeah.
Mike D was in that, who plays in CR and like a bunch of other bands. Like that was melodic hardcore punk, but it
Mhm.
was like more like Madball than it was like any of these other
Yes.
SoCal bands.
Yeah, it's this whole scene to me is like right now it's kind of like with screamo. There's only like a handful of bands that you can still go for. And I was always a fan of Bad Religion because they're just like really good at what they do and they're smart and it isn't about partying and skating, but like this thing that happened with Lagwagon, Pennywise, and all these NoFX kind of epigones. I don't know. Like this is really bad nowadays. Yeah.
So that's what you think Rostock Vampires were going for?
They were before that. Like I mean, that at that time, of course, Bad Religion was still a name, and NoFX were already around. Maybe they were going for that, but it was before like that whole thing happened. That this stuff became popular was with Dookie of Green Day and the one Offspring record, which I think was '94. So like the big like ball of bands was like '94 to '96 in that vein. So Rostock Vampires were definitely before that. But still, I mean, there's a lot of German punk bands that still sound like this. So I would just like put it in the category of like shitty German punk.
Right on.
But dude, like now we're getting serious because the next one is one of the bands that I found through this very videotape and I became completely obsessed with until I found out that they're Christians. um I mean, I still love it. And here again is like, I mean, we talked about it in other episodes when I was chasing the heaviness in metal and like AC/DC and Iron Maiden and Metallica didn't do it for me because their artworks were more brutal than their actual music. And I found my way to death metal through Obituary and these bands. Like I was always looking for like extreme stuff. And there's this Australian band on here now called Mortification with their video Terminate Damnation from Scrolls of the Megaloth in '92. And the vocals, like that dude pulled out, they're nasty as fuck. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like Carcass or something like that. There's like the early Carcass, like extreme, like vocals, and
Yeah.
I frankly, I don't know that much about this band at all. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I just know the
Yeah.
track from this record, really.
Yeah, but that video is also really cool because I mean, it could be a satanic video. I mean, you have like people in the audience slamming while they're playing, but they still like they play in a ruin, like an old castle or something. I don't know if there are old castles in Australia, but it looks like it. And but they have like these scenes of like Christ bearing his own cross. So I never dug into the lyrics. But the funny thing that is that I found out this band was started after these three guys were an old band called Light Power.
Whoa.
Not white power, but light power. So a Christian rock band. And then just decided to do like a death metal band, which is like really on the brink of grindcore at most parts, with like ultra nasty vocals called Mortification.
Now, did their like, did you dig into like the philosophy of the band, and were they like, we're a Christian death metal band and we're trying to spread the word of God, like, or they're just individually have Christian
Yeah.
beliefs?
That's what I hope, because I've never actually read interviews with them. It's just like back then, this one record came out, and when they did the next record, I was already like not really into death metal anymore. So they were like a band that wasn't featured anywhere. So I have no knowledge about like their thing, and that's what I said. Like I never dug into the lyrics that they did. It's just like one of the bands where I'm glad that like English is not my first language, so I can, like sometimes it's just like noise to me what these people do. And like, I mean, the vocals are nasty. Like if you
Yeah,
put like attention to it, you can understand it. But I don't think he's singing about like, I mean, terminate damnation. Maybe
yeah,
well,
maybe.
you can.
You know,
Oh Jesus. Oh yeah, Jesus. Especially yeah. Maybe I should not dig into the lyrics, because then I'm probably hated.
it's pretty gnarly though. I mean, I think the music is like, pretty
Yeah.
badass. And like I'm gonna fuck with it. I'm gonna see what I can come up with these guys.
Dude, and I have to say, like one of my favorite like all-time musicians is Dave Eugene Edwards of 16 Horsepower, Wovenhand, and
Yeah,
he's singing about Jesus the whole fucking time. So like, yeah, but like the music is fucking badass. So like, guys out there, if you're into like this nasty, technical, almost grindish death metal with like harsh vocals, check out Scrolls of the Megaloth of Mortification. Good record.
yeah, and especially if you love Jesus too. You can
Yeah.
you can get down with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, Okay, next one. Like I did a slip up that I wrote to you earlier on. I forgot to put a music video on our list, and I'm dumb for it because it's one of my favorite tracks on the whole video. It's a Swedish death metal band Afflicted with the video for Ivory Tower of their '92 record Prodigal Son. Yeah. Did you have time to check that video out earlier today?
Yeah, I did. It's funny. Like when I tried to find the video too and see if I can add it to the list, but everywhere I looked, it was taken down. So where'd you find it?
I put in YouTube Afflicted Ivory Tower, and I had 3 hits.
Yeah, but they were all like, those links weren't taken down.
No, like
Weird.
over here, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, maybe it's like a
uh,
U.S. like European thing. I don't
yeah,
know. Weird.
but you were able to see it in the playlist that I did,
Yeah,
right?
and the play when you put it in the playlist, I was able to watch it. But when
Okay.
like earlier in the week when you sent this over, I was like watching the
Yeah.
videos, and when I got to this one, I was like, it said video removed or something like that. You get like that broken, like the
Yeah,
symbol,
yeah,
And then I did my own. Excuse me. I did my own search on YouTube, and
yeah.
there's a couple of different places you can see the thumbnail, but when I clicked on the
Mhm.
thumbnail, it was taken down. So maybe it's like a
Hmm.
licensing thing over here. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably the same thing that happened to the actual video of Death is Just the Beginning, which is what, like, you can still see the thumbnail, but when you click on it, the video just doesn't open. Um, but yeah, I mean, glad that it like showed up, because yeah, before we get into it, one of the best news this week, Century Media is going to re-release the first 2 Afflicted records and a compilation of their demos and EPs on vinyl this
Oh,
year.
nice.
And dude, the Prodigal Son is like such an underrated gem. It's some parts of the record are so weird. It's almost in the vein of Confessor and these kind of bands, but they have like a sense of urgency in their melodies. And this video, dude, like Ivory Tower, that song, the performance in there is like, yeah, I would say it's like one of my 3 favorite things on this videotape.
Yeah, it's a sick track. I'm not that familiar with the band. I got to be honest about that. And
Yeah.
maybe I need to get on board with this Century
Yeah.
Media release.
Dude, it's like this there's like these images of videos that just like stick to you. I mean, we talked about Wood by Alice in Chains, or like Jesus Christ Post of Soundgarden. That was the time when music videos really struck a nerve with people. And one of the death metal videos I always loved most was Kingdom Gone by At the Gates of
Yeah.
their first record. And this video here kind of has the same feel to it from the way that the singer moves around. It's just like in a sepia kind of tone and not in black and white. But the singer has got the looks. The song is amazing. Like the lead melodies, it's technical and atmospheric at the same time. And there are like several parts in there that are like completely different. And in the end, it breaks down into a part which I think sounds like Fields of the Nephilim meeting Paradise Lost meeting Iron Maiden. It's so fucking good, and what a gem this record is, man.
I need to get on board with this stuff then. Like I said,
Yeah,
they're just one of those bands they just kind of slipped under the radar with me.
dude, for a lot of people, I think Afflicted is not one of the bands that if people talk about Nuclear Blast, that they will say like, oh yeah, Afflicted. I think it's like the next band we're going to talk about. This is like to me the prototypical Nuclear Blast band. Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll let you do the
it's
intro on this here.
yeah, it's like we played with them last year. Actually, the show the week after Unholy Passion, also played the Eindhoven Metal Meeting, and it was Benediction and Unleashed back to back on the main stage. So I got to take a picture with Johnny Hetland of Unleashed,
Nice.
and while I was doing this, Dave Ingram, the fucking singer of Benediction, who was also the singer for Dave Ingram, the singer of before Both Roar for a brief stint. He just came up to me, "Hey mate, would you be able to take a picture of me and Johnny?" And I'm like, yes. And I'm
Nice.
like, can I sneak into the picture too? It's like, um, dude, like I mean, Benediction put out a record. I think it was last year or the year before that, and that fucking it's fucking good. And yeah, like Benediction to me, were like in the Nuclear Blast catalog back then. It was like a copied paper catalog where you could order merch. This is like one of the first images, like the Grand Leveler and Darkest the Season, their releases. They all had these T-shirts, the logo. That was the thing that got me into death metal, like the artworks and the way it sounds. Benediction was never a band I was super into, but the looks of that were terrific.
Yeah, to me, they're classic old school death metal. You know what I mean? Just
Yes. Yeah.
very much like if you like go back in a time machine, that's like what death metal kind of sounded like from that era, really. And yeah, to me, and also Barney Greenway was briefly in that band too for a little while.
Oh, oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yep, he was
Yeah,
their
it's like
vocalist.
they always get compared to both Thrower. I mean, because they're both from Great Britain. I don't know. With the third record, Transcend the Rubicon, they kind of like turned it down a notch from the speed and were more in that tank rolling kind of sound that Bolt Thrower had, but they were never Bolt Thrower. Bolt Thrower were like they were something really special. And Benediction is always good. Like all the records are good, but nothing special about them. It's just like they're lifers and they're
Yeah,
good at what they do.
yeah, I definitely back them. But if I had to choose between them or Bolt Thrower, it's Bolt Thrower all day, man. That band's just
Yes,
like you
absolutely.
just want to like destroy stuff when you listen to those first few Bolt Thrower records.
Yeah, it makes me really want to sit in a tank and roll over some cars, you know? Like, yeah, so next one is we're going back to Austria with a band called Disharmonic Orchestra. And this to me, I wrote down is like the Austrian Krellis of death metal.
I I don't know if I like it or not, but it's almost like De Kreutzen playing death metal. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Because
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
like there are things about it I dug, but I think overall I was like, I don't know. This like it's not really for me. I mean, I like De
Yeah, it's a
Kreutzen, but they're a different type of band.
yes, sure. Disharmonic Orchestra is also something back then I didn't dig, and I was interested to see like if I like it better now, but it still doesn't do anything for me. Um, just this quick side note is like Harald Bestek, I think was this, I wrote it down. He was the founding member of Disharmonic Orchestra. He left the band in '88 and he formed another band called Disastrous Murmur, which is have a record called Rhapsodies in Red, which was released on Osmos in '92. One of my top 10 death metal records of all time. One of the shittiest artworks, but this is like atmospheric hell evil death metal in the most barbaric Bavarian way, Austrian way. Yeah.
I totally am unfamiliar with that. I need to check it out.
Yeah. There's also a band that hardly anyone knows, but if you Google like Disastrous Murmur, Rhapsodies in Red, the artwork is so ridiculous that like you don't want to listen to it. But if you listen to it, you will surely like it. It's really dark and pretty nasty. Yeah.
Yeah. Up next, we got a
right.
very sick band too. So
yeah, it's like then on the video is a brief stint where you see Brutality. Back then, a completely new band get interviewed, present stuff of their first record, a band that I became really like a fan of later on when they released it. But yeah, dude, like the next one, this is to me the best Swedish death metal song of all times. It's Dismember's Soon to Be Dead with the uncut version of that video. It appears on the record Like an Ever-Flowing Stream and on the Pieces EP. And yeah, if you speak like when we spoke about satanic death metal with hypocrisy, this video is the real fucking deal.
That's probably one of my, Like an Ever-Flowing Stream is probably my favorite record by Dismember, actually. And
yes.
the video has a great Swedish Jesus in it too.
Yes.
The dude, like this guy's it's awesome because he's like obviously this like Norse, Scandinavian guy that's supposed to be Jesus Christ nailed to the cross. And I was like, oh, look at that Swedish guy like nailed to the cross.
But the color scheme of that video with these guys running over, like jumping over flames, like topless, but like spike belts on the black jeans. They're so fucking cool. And I mean, like 3 of those guys weigh as much as I weigh now, probably. And then they have this one scene where they just toss the metal cross into this pool of blood.
Yeah.
So it's so fucking good, man. And so here's a question. I mean, we talked about like Cannibal Corpse with Corpse Grinder or with Barnes. And there's always these fights that people have, like Megadeth or Metallica, Slayer or Sepultura, Joy Division, New Order. My question is, Entombed or Dismember?
I was hoping that you wouldn't ask that question, man, because it's like that's a really hard question. That's a really hard choice to make, and I might go with Dismember only because there's a really, really long swath of records that Entombed made that I didn't like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but the early Entombed stuff, and then like even like Wolverine Blues, like to that period, I thought was like pretty amazing, and but then they made a bunch of records that I didn't like. Then they made a couple of records I liked, and then they split into like Entombed AD and like I don't know, like and that stuff. But I feel like Dismember over the timeline has produced better music, more consistently, I guess.
Yeah, I think so too. But like to me, I would say Dismember's Like an Ever-Flowing Stream to me is the best Swedish death metal record of all time. After that, it's like the first 2 Entombed records, and then again Dismember. It's Clandestine and Left Hand Path they're fucking classics and amazing, but nothing is as fucking killer as Like an Ever-Flowing Stream to me.
Yeah, like that's the strength of those 2 Entombed records is like almost enough to carry them through their whole career. But then I don't know, like there's stuff that I just didn't like by them that came out later.
Yeah. When they started to do like more like motorcycle rock in a way.
Yeah.
Like I can listen to like this. I dig like one record that grew on me is the Inferno record because it's more like Motorhead in a way. A lot of people like the Inferno record, but I dare you to go back and listen to it. I think like probably you would like it now. Yeah.
Maybe are motorcycles a big thing in Sweden?
I don't think so, but like it's to me it's always like this rocking thing that helicopters and did. This is like to me guys on choppers listen to when they're into like rock music. Like not like the Harley American rockers, but you know, like the evil satanic bikers
Yeah,
probably listen to stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah. No, I was wondered about that. You know, but yeah,
All right.
Dismember, excellent band.
Now, next one is a band that I think I introduced you to a month ago when you were here, or
Yeah.
at least like
Yep.
gave the. And did you actually like? Do you know where they're from?
Oh, I know they're American. I don't know where they're from, but you know, that's
They're from yeah.
go ahead. I think
Berg
I probably
Berg,
wrong
Berg
about something here. Go ahead.
no, Bergenfield, New Jersey.
I could see that. They seem like guys. They seem like tri-state area guys. Definitely.
Yeah, it's we're talking about Revenant with the video "The Unearthly" from the absolute underrated, one of a kind killer record "Prophecies of a Dying World" from '91. The only release, the only full-length release they ever did.
Full disclosure, I had forgotten that they were even on this collection. And then when I was in
Mhm.
Germany, when we were hanging out at your place, about a month ago or so, uh, you reintroduced me to them, and I was like, man, how could I forget about how this band because they're so sick? And yeah, man, I'm gonna try to score that on vinyl, man. See if I can find that somewhere.
Yeah,
You know, it's a great record.
that it's I mean it's listed as death thrash in the way that there's like a bunch of bands like this in Germany, like Protector and these bands. But dude, Revenant blows them all away. They're so fast at what they do, very political, very I mean it's not about like gore and death. It's a very political echo kind of record about the world. I mean, the prophecies of a dying world. There you have it, and it's just this song is so terrific, and it got me into it. And like I bought the record, and I still love it to this day. It's probably also in my top 10 of like death metal records of all time. Yeah.
And the music's like very technical, and
Yes.
the singer gets a lot of lyrics out too, man. Like he's like
Oh, dude. Oh, wow. Yeah.
disintegrate into micro eternity. Like he's like singing that over like these incredible like runs, you know. And I'm like, damn, this guy's like very talented, you know.
Also, like here, not like growling death metal vocals, because I think that's why probably like a lot of death metal fans didn't like them. It's more like, yeah, thrashy kind of vocals. It's like you can understand him really well, but like the vocals are still harsh and aggressive. But yeah, it's the lyrics of that one song alone is probably longer than like a whole record full of Ultha lyrics. Yeah.
I feel like the vocals are what tag these guys as like a death thrash band because
Yes.
the music itself I don't find to be very thrashy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the thing is, dude, I mean, later on in that video, like on the video, there's brief stints of Gorefest recording their second record, Falls. And you know, like what my feelings are on that record.
Yeah.
And in 91, I mean, in 91, I was fucking 11 years old back then and just like found out about like real rock music and everything. Like Revenant toured Europe with Gorefest, and they played like a venue that I've been to at shows, which was like an hour away from where I lived. And I mean, this is like, there's this meme that a lot of people like reposted. I think Mike Scandato posted it too. It was like dudes with a time machine, and you see like a guy like at the door of a Morbid Angel show, like for $5 in 91 or something. I that's just like one of the, there's videos of those two bands back to back playing like a show in Schweinfurt, Germany. And this is like the thing I wish I could go to. I want to go to that Bad Brains at CBGB's video that is like on YouTube. I want to say Fugazi play in front of the White House in snow, like these kind of things. But like seeing Revenant in '91 in Germany with Gorefest, it would blow my mind. I would like die a happy man in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, Gorefest is another band that's awesome. That
Oh,
you know, I feel like only a certain group of people know who they are.
Yeah, dude, don't get me started on Falls of Gorfit. It's not on here. Otherwise, you would hear me come all over my phone, man. Uh,
I'm coming all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. Ejaculation imminent. Yeah. Okay. Well, the next one is a band I'm sure you haven't
Oh.
heard of before, and I also don't know if it's like your kind of music because I know you're like into happy pop music. Yeah, Mike, you want to take the
Oh
run on the
yeah.
next one?
Yeah, of course. The next track is Winter, Servants of the Warsmen. And this band is like, if you grew up in like the New York area, they were huge. They cast a huge shadow in New York City in the kind of grimy doom crust world. And also, Stefan Flam has been a guest on this show, and he's a
Hmm.
guitar player in this band. And he's a good friend of mine at this point. And he had the other band, Godin, which came out. Their LP came out a couple of years ago, and he's still out there doing stuff. And yeah, Winter were fucking titans in the underground like New York crust doom world.
Yeah. To this day, Into Darkness. I mean, what a name,
Yeah,
what an artwork. Dude, like everything about this record is right and perfect. And to this day, people hold it in such high regards. And I think the biggest praise was when Southern Lord did like this fantastic reissue of the vinyl some years back. And with merchandise, and I slept on the merch, which still to this day bothers me. But that record, man, that was one of the records that I remember buying in Mannheim at Pro Music, where I just browsed through the CD section and it's like, oh, it's in the death metal section. It looks cool. Then I bought it, put it on, and I was like, why is this so slow? Where are the blast beats? And I didn't appreciate it in the beginning, and then it grew on me, and it's probably one of the reasons why I'm into funeral doom. Yeah.
yeah. And there's also a real heavy like Celtic Frost kind of thing, especially on this
Yeah.
track. It's like very
Yeah.
much in that like dreary, just like dark Celtic Frost vibe. And yeah, Steph
Yeah.
also played in Serpentine Path, which
Hmm.
they did a record a while back, and that's got like members of Unearthly Trance and Electric Wizard actually.
Oh man. Yeah. The Garden records. I remember when you like did these episodes with him, I'm like, oh dude, like Garden, I haven't heard of that. And then the record was like, okay, so this goes heavy into the winter direction and I'm all for it. Yeah.
I hope he does some more stuff, man. I really hope they do another Godin record. You know,
I would love that. Yeah. So the next one, and this to this day is to me the sore thumb in this video because it's a band I could never like I got never into that because it's simply not my type of music to this day. Um it's Saint Vitus.
yeah. I
Crazy,
mean,
right?
yeah,
Like Saint Vitus on a nuclear blast.
yeah. It's funny because like I got into them when I was like a kid because of Black Flag and SST, and even though they were a hard rock band, they were on SST Records in the beginning, and
Yeah.
I think as time went on, I appreciated them more, but I don't know. I can't really say that I'm that into Saint Vitus. Like I like them, but I don't love the
Yeah.
band. There's other bands in that style. And these guys looked old in 1992, man. Like on that video,
Yes.
those guys. Like I wonder if like what those guys look like fucking old men, and this is like 30 years ago at this point.
Yeah, but maybe wheat like contains them and they're like kind of like they don't morph. And that's just the funny thing because have you seen that the singer in this video is actually wearing a Pantera with a cannabis leaf, like the shirts that they had back then. So a band like Saint Vitus that clearly influenced Pantera in like the whole New Orleans scene that they're kind of involved with. Um, and now like Saint Vitus is rocking a Pantera shirt.
Yeah, I mean they're a heavily influential band. I know that that's like a band that the I Hate God dudes love them, and they've influenced a lot of that kind of like stoner rock stuff, which I'm not a huge fan of. But I mean, they're cool. You got to give them their respect, but it's not something I really listen to that much.
Yeah, it's absolutely not my style. It's like Doom to me needs nasty vocals, like Doom with the clean vocals. Never a big fan of that. There are some bands that pull it off well, but like Saint Vitus, I tried it, and there's people that I like that I back that are into them, but no, it's not a band that I'm really like a fan of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe because I've never done drugs or never smoked weed, so probably that. Well, we're like on the closing stretch with number 14, which is also a band that is like hugely popular but never really struck a chord with me. Again, Austrians, again, something sexual like Fetish 69 that they were obsessed with. It's the band Pungent Stench with Sick, Bizarre, Defected Creation off of their 91 record Being Caught Buttering.
That was kind of their deal. Like they like a kind of like sexual perversion band. Like that was like their trip, really.
Yeah, it became more intense on the later records that they did, but they're like at this part it started. Can't say that I was ever a big fan of Pungent Stench, but I have to say that the artwork always struck a chord with me. And later on, I found out that it's by Joel Peter Whitkin, a guy who did some fantastic photo manipulation stuff, dark as shit.
Yeah.
Our mutual friend Dwid of Integrity had like images
he's
of
not
that.
He's not my friend. Bro, just put that out there right now. Dwid is definitely not my friend. Okay, so
yeah,
yeah.
No, but like like a lot of the pictures that he did like showed up in great artwork. So like for everybody out there who's into dark, creepy photography, which looks like kind of this ghost photography that people in the early 19th century did. He's relatively contemporary. Check out Joel Peter Whitkin's stuff, like great stuff. And this artwork was also cool, but the music, nah, it's so weird. It's like in the beginning, it's like this weird groovy death metal with like a slap bass. Then it gets nasty, and then it has a like almost Saint Vitus stoner rock mid part. Nah, like to this day, it really doesn't do anything for me. Yeah.
I tend to agree with you about Pungent Stench. They were never a band that I really got into. I mean, there are things about them, like the aesthetics are cool. The guitar tone sounds like it's like like a heavy metal pedal. Like one of these like
yeah.
It's cool. But I just not really my kind of thing.
Nah. Again, I have to reference like if you want Austrian death metal that is good from that time, the band that would just like because Punch and Stench were friends with Disharmonic Orchestra, Fetish 69 were like kind from their surrounding. That's why they all ended up in Nuclear Blast. If you want good Austrian death metal, just the first Disastrous Murmur, Rhapsodies in Red. All the stuff they did afterward also became kind of sexual deviant death metal, which is weird. I don't know what the Austrian kink is with sex metal, but yeah, it's like not my kind of stuff.
I think doesn't that dude from Pungent Stench, like when I was one of the times I was in Vienna, there was like a shop that I think that dude owned in Vienna, and
did it had a lot of dildos.
No, it was like really cool, like stuff, like kind of esoteric books, and
okay,
yeah, there was like this White House like hardcover biography that was written in German that I thought about buying, but I'm like, I don't speak German, so
yeah. It might be, but there's again one of these bands that like then later on when there was kind of a retro vibe about death metal, they had like a brief stint of like importance, and now it's like the main singer, he does like I don't know, his name is blah 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 playing Pungent Stench, so he goes on tour now like playing stuff of those first records without the others in the band approving. So there's also this fuckfest that Entombed had, and a lot of the other bands like Batushka AD, and all that shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, Pungent Stench seemingly is like a band that people are into enough that you would like fight the other band members to have the rights to play those songs. Yeah.
Not my cup of tea necessarily.
No. Which brings us to the last one, which back then wasn't my cup of tea, but later on I really kind of had like a sweet tooth for them for a while, which is American Sicko's Macabre
Oh yeah.
with the song Exhumer of their '89 record Gloom, which was released in '89 on Vinyl Solution, but and it's not on Nuclear Blast. So this song is not on the Nuclear Blast record, but they signed a deal, and their Eponymous Sinister Slaughter record in '93 with a cool Beatles reference artwork that came out on Nuclear Blast. But the song Exhumer is of a record that wasn't even released by Nuclear Blast.
Yeah, they just were like, this track is sick, so let's put it on this video discography.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's pretty cool though. I mean, I Macabre is one of those bands that I totally back them. And a few years ago, we played with them at out in Michigan at this festival with it was like I think it was like a housecore Phil Anselmo kind of thing, because a lot of the bands.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the bands that were on that fest were bands that Housecore worked with, and it was fun. It was great seeing them, man. They killed it. They were fucking awesome live.
Yeah, it's like back then I didn't really understand what's going on, but like later on when I found my way into real grindcore and power violence, I could like I really got back and could appreciate this way more. It sounds like pretty much from the content of everything, it's kind of like Mortician without the death metal in a way.
Yeah, definitely. It's like if you like, yeah, I could see the similarity between both bands. I mean, there was like the whole Dahmer fascination that Macabre had,
Yeah.
and it's they to me they seem like real creeps. Like probably guys that don't get out that much, and fixate on this like dark, like kind of unhealthy like content, and that was reflected in their music,
Yeah. Yeah, I always like to me like if in my head it was that when they have a family fest, they all wear like red mesh hats and have like like these farmer pants on, like kind of these rural sickos that would live like in Carcosa in a way, like
yeah, totally.
yeah, I don't know. They had like this redneck vibe to them. I don't even know them. Like I've never seen them live. But I mean, what they do is smart. Like it's not like it's like really well executed, and it's just about creepy stuff by creepy guys, I assume. Man.
Yeah, and that it gives this like veneer of authenticity to it, because it's like, well, these guys probably have some skeletons in their closet as well.
Very well might be. Yeah, man, and then the whole video is gone. Like, and then it ends with a guy like the Nuclear Blast staff throwing various merch art like stuff at the camera, and then it fades out to another chunk of winter music. And that was Death Is Just the Beginning, the videotape, and one of the founding stones of our friendship.
Yeah, man, that was a formative evening, and does Nuclear Blast offer this as like a Blu-ray or something like that, or they just
Nah.
Yeah.
Nah. It's the only video that is actually on the Nuclear Blast YouTube channel is the Hypocrisy video, as you will see in the list. All the other videos are from different sources. Some of them are ripped, like I said, and you can see still like this beginning that all the videos had on this videotape, but you can't track it down. There's like, I checked it, there's like a bunch of offers on Discogs for this videotape, where you will pay like between 25 to 40 bucks for a video copy of that. There's no DVD version, there's no digital version. I don't know why they don't do it. I mean, they could just take all of that shit, because they have the rights to these songs, and just put it on their YouTube channel or something. It's too bad, like, because it was entertaining, especially with the stints in between, like the interviews with Brutality and Gorefest. But yeah, I mean, copyright things, I have no idea about this shit. So Hey,
Yeah, it's a bummer, man, because I got to be honest, like if they did like a Blu-ray of both Volume One and Volume Two, and maybe extras can be extended videos, extended interviews or something like that, because I'm
yeah.
sure they only cut, like there's only like a minute or two of interview footage.
Yeah. There's also, it's weird because there was another installment of that which I didn't own, but I've seen it at a buddy's house, and this is online. Like you can see, like it's called "Death is Just the Beginning" best of. It's like a 1 minute, 1 hour and 50-minute video compilation. And it has like Amorphis from Tales of a Thousand Lakes and stuff like this. Also, like one of the few, like earlier, The Abyss, like one of the black metal bands that Peter Tedgren of Hypocrisy was in, this kind of stuff, and that's just rolling on YouTube. It's just this particular video compilation is not on there anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not cool. I wish they would do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. But guys out there, like I combined like a video playlist that I will put on the Instagram and Mike will surely put on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
So you can check out the videos if there's anything that you were into. And yeah, if you were also like a death metal nerd in the 90s, like we were, and you have suggestions like I just did with Disastrous Murmur or the Revenant stuff, please like leave it in the comments. Tell us about what your like early death metal hidden gems are, because I'm always into digging up stuff from that time that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah. And, thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.